So the focus for this session is going to be on the testing toolkit. Initially, this is part of the same initiative that covers the change control board that Matt Bohan is overseeing. So I've categorized as that, but I think at this point it makes sense to go right into the testing toolkit updates. Please keep going, Vijay. Thank you. Just a shout out to the team here. I think Georgi and Vijay have been full-time on the team, accelerating development. And we look at some of the business values that this intends to deliver and address. We have Matt, Michael, Shankar, and myself as well in various roles. Next slide, please. So these are the objectives that we started out for PI 11. Support a wider adoption of the testing toolkit by implementers. So here we went a little bit ambitious with Michael's motivation. The way that we wanted to showcase or prove that we achieved that was by having two of our implementers come to this session. Instead of us showing, okay, we did this, that, and all the features, we wanted to have the implementers or adopters of the testing toolkit briefly talk about their experiences, how they were able to use the testing toolkit, how it accelerated development of their use cases, and provided features to validation and things like that, or demonstration capabilities. So that's the first one. The second one is the implementing a hosted version of the testing toolkit. So in the next slide, I'll cover what we are trying to address there. Third one is a reference OAuth implementation using Keycloak. And we'll see how the team was able to deliver these. Next slide, please. So going a level higher to what we are seeing here, focusing on the PI11. Initially, we started out the testing toolkit with the intention to validate FSP IOP APIs implementations. We wanted a tool that was easy to use by all types of users, technical, non-technical, meaning QAs, developers, business and product users. And we wanted it to have some demonstration capabilities using user interfaces. But once that was developed, it seemed like it made sense to use that to various APIs. So now we have so much evolution, so much progress made here that we can use it not just for FSP IOP API, but all the module loop set of APIs validation, and that too simultaneously, concurrently. So we can validate a DFSP implementation, a switch hub implementation. That is one aspect of the business value. The other one is supporting schemes on scaling. So this ties into two things that were brought up in previous sessions. Mawali brought up that they were looking to focus heavily on onboarding, and Murthy brought up the concept of integrating testing toolkit to help onboarding DFSPs, FSPs into schemes. So the way this can be done is there's several modes here. First can be a localized mode that the testing toolkit can be easily spun up and used to validate DFSPs, which they can take as a first step. It will ensure that their implementation follows the contracts or the swaggers, the API definitions, things like that. And then they can log into a scheme provided URL. So that is what we're calling the hosting mode. Without going too much into it, once we are done with that demo, then we can come back to that and and see how that is being delivered. Apart from that, we are heavily using it for demonstration capabilities of new features. For example, the version 1.1 changes, the patch notification, the version 1.1 implementation on headers, all those things. It made sense to use this. So wanted to highlight the business value that we're delivering. Next slide, please. Through this. Coming back to PI11, on the right side, we see the hosting capability. We won't go too much into that. Leave it to Vijay for demo and details. On the support wider adoption, so these two again correlate to the objectives we had initially. Today, we will see the members or colleagues from PISP team and the ATM POS team from Coil and Applied Payments coming into the session and demonstrating how they're using the testing toolkit. We actually overachieved on that because we also have the core team and the FXP product team also using it. And we have several other features like hub only mode and we have some user interface enhancements. And in the core session, we also saw how the Helm charts for the TTK command line interface is being leveraged for on-demand and schedule runs and for post-install validations. Apart from that, there was some maintenance and bug fixes as well. With that, I will pass over to Vijay. Thank you. Vijay, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Vijay again. I will go through the basics of the testing toolkit quickly, and then I will talk about how we supported the teams who are using testing toolkit for their development work. And of course, I will talk about the improvements we did in this PI. So where can we use this testing toolkit? Where does it fit? This is the architecture diagram of the Moja loop system. There is a pair FSP, Moja loop switch, and pair FSP here. So here we can simulate pair FSP with the testing toolkit. From the testing toolkit, we can send the outbound requests, HTTP requests, and the testing toolkit can listen on a port where it can get the callbacks. So here we can send the request to Moja loop hub, or we can send the request directly to another DFSP. And we can simulate PEFSP also. Testing toolkit can get inbound requests from the Moja loop switch, and it can generate responses based on the Swagger file provided that we call it as mock responses, and it can send it back. And also it can get the request directly from another DFSP. And also here we can simulate the whole switch and PFSP because of the implementation of the testing toolkit. It can support other APIs other than FSP IOP. It can support many APIs. We just need to provision the Swagger file to it, then it will take care of validating the inbound requests and generating the mock responses based on the regular expressions and schema in the Swagger file. So we provisioned the admin API, central admin API, and also the ALS admin API, and even settlements API to the testing toolkit. So it can simulate the whole thing. And the last mode is hub-only mode. It can simulate the a Moja loop switch. Here, a DFSP can send a request to testing toolkit. Then testing toolkit can forward that request to the specified DFSP. This is a hub-only mode, and it is new in this PI. This is based on the feedback from the community.
If I can add to that, Vijay, on the last bit, if a DFSP wants to test its both inbound and outbound implementations, it can provision the testing toolkit as hub-only mode, provide its endpoints, the inbound and outbound endpoints, and then validate both simultaneously. So that was the motivation behind supporting that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. Next, I want to talk about the users of the testing toolkit, how they are using the testing toolkit in their further testing. First, PSP team. They are using the testing toolkit, and we helped them to adapt the testing toolkit by conducting few demo sessions, and also we addressed some gaps they identified. I will pass it to Sam to talk about it more.
Thank you, Vijay. Yes, PISP team, I think, is using it in two places, not just one. So we have Louis and Sridhar on the panel, and I think both of them will show different aspects of how it is being used. Thank you for offering to come on board again, Sridhar and Louis. Please go ahead and show us how you're able to use the toolkit.
Yeah, I'll go first. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Vijay. Also, thank you for your support. So the demo I showed earlier using the toolkit was using the toolkit to mock out the merge loop switch for the account linking flows. So did you want me to share my screen, Sam, to kind of just dig into some of those requests?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Sure, Louis.
Yeah. So I don't have the other picture up here, but essentially we can see, this is the session that I did in the demo earlier, the calls that are being made to the testing toolkit from the back end of this application here on the left. One of the things that's been really useful for us is this monitoring window to be able to kind of see where things are going wrong. So for example, if I set the testing toolkit up to say the wrong endpoint, let's call it merge loop 2, and hit save, and then I try and do this is the callback URL from the testing toolkit to the demo server. If I then try and do something like the account linking flow that we saw earlier, let me head back to monitoring and put in some random identifier, we can see that this request actually failed. And it failed, and it gives us this kind of rundown of everything that happened. And it said, actually, we couldn't send the callback to merge loop 2. So in the past, these types of tests against the merge loop switches were really hard to see because you didn't get a clear, you had to run the full merge loop switch yourself, and then you couldn't really look at any one specific place to debug and fix the issues. So, I mean, we've seen it working. I'm not going to take up all of your time, but you've already seen an example of it working. So I'll hand over now to Sridhar, who's going to talk through another way that we're using the test toolkit. Sridhar.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Sridhar. I work for Modusbugs. I am part of PISP development team. Our team is using testing toolkit for contract testing as well. We integrated it with the CI/CD to improve the build quality. I want to show one test case demo that is the PISP transaction flow. Uh, Here, the third-party scheme adapter is an interface between the module loop API compliant switch and the third-party backend that does not have natively implemented the module loop API. Here, we want to test the third-party scheme adapter so that we want to it can handle the PISP side of a transaction and verify it's working as expected. So since we want to test these three phases, party lookup, initiate transaction, and approve transaction. So here we have not implemented the DFSP side. So we are using the TTK to mock out the switch and DFSP implementation. And the TTK returns the mocked callback responses and also makes the follow-up request to the scheme adapter based on the rules. In the scheme adapter, in the testing toolkit, callback rules we configured, set up rules here, and in the synchronous response rules also we configured. So based on these rules, it responds with the proper response, mock response. Uh, so now for the demo purpose in local, I'm running the contract test against this particular scheme adapter, and so when we run it in the local Docker setup, it will make a request to the TTK, and we can see it in the TTK. We received these three calls, and it responded with a proper mock response based on the rules. And here the TTK validates the incoming and outgoing responses based on the API definition or whatever we configured. So based on that, it validates here. So, and as we integrated it with the CI/CD, every time we make a new change or it build before build deployment it will be tested. So every time we are build tested, so that the build quality will be, I mean, we feel that build quality is improved prior to the before implementation. uh, yeah, that is the one scenario we want to show it here.
Thank you so much, Luis Sridhar, for coming on board and sharing us with your experience with us. Vijay, let's take a quick look at the ATM POS scenario, and then we'll have Jordi talk through their use case as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is another use case where the testing toolkit is being used. So here we helped them by demo sessions and implemented some features they suggested, like showing outbound requests in the monitoring page. And also we actively worked with them for the faster onboarding. So yeah, I will pass it to Jordi.
Yeah, hi Vijay, hi everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. Let me just
Yes.
share my screen. Yeah, so as Vijay said, we were using the Mozilla testing toolkit for our ATM/POS testing scenario for the integration with Mozilla. So first of all, let me just start with how the toolkit is lightweight and simply deployable on my system. So previously we were using the whole Mozilla module, which is either deployed on a Google Cloud environment or on a high-end server where it can run smoothly. So currently I can easily deploy this toolkit using a simple Docker compose command and run the same toolkit on my laptop where I'm using, where I'm developing and changing our adapter to send the request to Mozilla. So the main advantage that I find with it is it can save us a lot of time in the deployment process and the infrastructure also. So what I can find interesting is that it will easily send and respond all the things, all the API calls, just like what we uh, uh, what we what we are expecting from the whole Mozilla module itself. So I just want to go through the steps that we followed. So we just need to integrate all the same request that we used to send from our ATM or POS onto the Mozilla deployment. So we can see this is the custom outbound request that we designed on the toolkit with the help of Vijay. So for our scenario for using the ATM or POS, we will be having a get authorizations in between these POS codes and POS transfers here. And in the last, you can see a put transfer request also being sent from the toolkit. So with these 4 transaction requests from the outbound request from the toolkit, we got the complete transaction cycle for our scenario. So huge thanks to Vijay and Sam who helped me for the integration in here. So really it helped us to shorten all the testing times, time cycle. And the best thing is that in the monitoring part, they have developed the inbound and outbound requests separately so that we can easily see all the inbound requests that the toolkit is receiving and the outbound request that is sending back to us. And it hugely helped me in the troubleshooting part where if we send any of this field with a different format that it is mentioned on the API, it will easily show us on the response. Now it's all successful response. This is just test data from my ATM simulator where I used to send the transactions. So if there is any issues with the data, the data format that we are sending, it will easily show us on the response that this field is having an issue and this is the expected value. We can easily do the testing and troubleshooting from the same machine we are working on. That's a huge thing for me. And the next thing that I want to see is that we can easily configure everything on the settings page. So here we can mention the callback URL that we are receiving. It's very easily configurable, everything in there. And also with the help of which I managed to get hold of the toolkit configurations easily, so I can configure everything, every request from my own end now and make this transaction cycle complete. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for all the support to help us achieve this thing. So now we can easily test, make the changes on our adapter, LPS adapter, and do the testing from our own end in the same machine itself. That's a huge thing for us. Thank you, guys. Over to you, Sam. Vijay.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thanks, Vijay. So from those two, I think we are seeing that the toolkit is greatly helping us accelerate developer as well as business onboarding, while also giving demonstration and other capabilities for live deployments. For live deployments, I think we're focusing on the onboarding aspect that it will simplify. As we are seeing with the developer cases, DFSPs can easily use this, which is very lightweight, without having to either have access or deploy a whole module loop deployment. They can use this, which will act as a switch and help them validate their deployments in their own time. And then when they're ready, they can log on to the switch and ask for permission and make sure that they are compliant to the APIs. Go ahead, Vijay. Thank you.
Okay, so the next user is obviously core team. Core team is using the testing toolkit from the last PA itself. We just replaced the Postman with the testing toolkit and for the testing of the development, and also for the demo for demonstrating some features with the visually appealing UI. So that's one use case. And the other use case here is scheduled regression tests. In this PI, we improved the testing toolkit CLI to be capable of sending Slack notifications and upload the consolidated report to S3. And also we added the Helm chart for that that I already discussed in the core session. So we have a Helm chart for we made a testing toolkit as default service in the module loop switch, and we have a Helm chart for TTK CLI, so that we can run regression tests on daily basis or scheduled regression tests.
One of the great benefit of this is that typically deployments, when they're deployed by default using the default config available on module loop charts, they don't have DNS names. And when you want to test it from outside, it needs DNS names. So by having this as part of the cluster itself, even without any other further configuration on DNS names, we can still get the implementation validated, because the TTK service itself is present inside that VPN and cluster, and it can, using the local IPs, hit those endpoints and validate the deployment. So that's another great benefit here, apart from the others.
So this is one objective, to support adapters of the testing toolkit. The other main objective is adding hosting capability. We implemented the hosted solution as POC in the last PI. Now we completed that end to end. So the idea is here, if a scheme want to host the testing toolkit and give access to their DFSPs, so that they can send module loop requests and they can get the callbacks. So here we introduced several components like NoSQL database, which is MongoDB. Till now, the testing toolkit is based on file storage. But now if we run the testing toolkit in hosted mode, it will use the NoSQL database for storing the settings, inbound rules and reports, logs, etc. So we need to maintain those things DFSP wise. So we had to introduce the database here. And the connection manager, we refactored the logic around connection manager to make it work with the new structure in the hosted mode. And we provided a sample OAuth server, which is key clock in the Helm chart. So if a scheme want to deploy the Helm chart, they will get key clock OAuth server, connection manager, and MongoDB, and the testing toolkit by default. So complete end-to-end solution. They can just log into to the OAuth server and as admin, and they can create users for their DFSPs and give those credentials to the DFSPs. So everything works here based on the user accounts created. So yeah, I will pass it to Georgi to demonstrate on the hosted solution.
Hi everyone, let me share my screen. So yeah, so first I will log into the Cakewalk authentication server. So here you can see the endpoint. It's dev5 on TTKF and hosted out.module.live. So I will click on administration console and I will log in as admin. So here we can see all the configuration for the Cakewalk realm. And here in this section, in the main section, we can find all the groups that we defined and also the users. So here we can see that we have several users like DFSP1, Georgi, VJ, Hub, and so on. Yeah, we can see how they're configured. They have first name, last names, the attribute DFSP ID, credentials, and the groups that it's assigned. So yeah, let me log in also to the connection manager. Here you can see that the host is different. It contains MCM. So I will log in as this user. Here in the endpoint configuration, we can define ingress endpoints for the callbacks. And yeah, here we can assign some certificates for the JVS. Here we can see all other DFSP which are registered to the connection manager. So let me log in also the testing toolkit. This is the endpoint. I will again log in as the same user. This is the welcome page. Here we can see the monitoring tab, the settings, and stuff like this. Yeah, let me log in as DFSP1. I did some configuration there. So here I updated the callback URL. So I will send a request from Postman. This is the get parties for the DFSP1 with the FSP IP source header DFSP1. Yeah, here we can see the request and the response. Here the status is 202. And yeah, thanks for.
Thank you,
Yeah.
that was a great presentation. Vijay, we are a little bit short on time, so can you continue with your demo as well? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so with the new Helm chart, we deployed the testing toolkit in two modes here. This is the standalone mode and this is the hosted mode. You can see the several services in the hosted mode, like a connection manager, key clock, and MongoDB. So yeah, and also I'm running the testing toolkit in my local machine. So the new features here in the outbound request page, based on the feedback from the community, we break down the JSON structure of the test case into several files. So now we can maintain the test cases in a complex folder and subfolder structure with sequencing constraints. I mean, we can reorder these test cases. So the testing toolkit will maintain a master.json file to maintain that sequence. And here we can import a complete folder. For suppose if I import the sequence folder, you can see all the files are imported here, and we can select a file and run the test. And if we make changes to the files, then we can export the folder as a zip file with this button. So the exported zip file contains these files and a master file for each folder to maintain the order. So this is about the collection manager, new file structure for the test cases, and yeah, we added the functionality to reorder the test cases, which was missing. So we can now reorder the test cases up and down, and also we can reorder the requests here. Yeah, with this option, we can reorder the requests. And the new monitoring page. Previously, we can see only inbound requests to the testing toolkit. Now we can see inbound and outbound requests. Let me send a transaction from the simulator. This is the interface for the Mojo Loop simulator. I'm also running 2 simulators in my machine. So this is one simulator. I sent a request and got a callback. You can see both incoming and outbound requests. Testing toolkit got get parties and then responded with put parties, then post quotes, put quotes. So now we can see every outbound request that is going out from the testing toolkit. Then we added additional option here to get the documentation of the APIs we provision in the testing toolkit. Currently, we provision these APIs, FSP settlement, central admin, and recently we added the Mojo Loop simulator. So if we want central admin, then we can see the documentation. This documentation will be dynamically rendered on the client side based on the Swagger definition. And the last feature is the new dashboard. Here we can, if we send a request to the testing toolkit, let me send a request from the simulator. So you can see the sequence diagram dynamically populated here in the dashboard. Let me send it again. You can see that it is dynamically populated. And yeah, and the last main feature is hub only mode. So we can enable hub only mode from settings here. If I enable this, previously when I sent the transfer from the Mojo Loop simulator, you can see the FSP ID is testing toolkit here. This means the testing toolkit is responding with the mock callback. It is not forwarding to any other DFS key. So if we add the hub only mode here, if you send the request, you can see the FSP ID is user DFSP2. So I'm running 2 simulators in my machine. I'm sending the transfer from one simulator, and the testing toolkit is forwarding those requests to the other simulator. You can see the outbound requests also here, get parties. Yeah, and yeah, that is it from me.
Thanks, Vijay.
Over to you, Sam.
Thank you. We'll skip the roadmap. I added it to the discourse so that we can pass it on to Simeon. Thank you, Simeon, again, and apologies. Yeah. If you have any feedback, please post on the discourse channel and we'll follow up. Thank you.